I'm getting tired, and I've screwed it up a few times, and I've sort of, but I lost it, and I've got it back, and so I'm going to carry on pretty much from where I was. And I've got to be really careful that I leave this one going and just start the other one up. Here we go. Because I'm using two different mouses, of course. There it is up there somewhere. Here we go.
Hopefully mandatory vaxxers will be the flashpoint.
So this is
Voices for Freedom wants the same thing. It's February 2021, and as vaccinations of frontline staff begin, Voices for Freedom encourages followers to swarm social media.
And one thing that we wanted to do is to flood the zone.
Flood the Zone is a strategy of American far-right political advisor Steve Bannon. Saturate with content to exploit people's confusion and distrust.
Let's flood the zone. Let's play them at their own game.
Welcome everybody to Voices for Freedom.
So once again, because they've run out of material, we're using Steve Bannon and what's going on in America to try and express an idea that they think's happening in New Zealand.
My name is Claire Deeks, and I'm a qualified lawyer and health advocate here in New Zealand.
In mid-2021, Claire Deeks...
A qualified lawyer. So she managed to get through university without being infested with left-wing ideas. Amazing.
...interviews a German-American lawyer.
This has never been about health. It looks as though this is about health. It looks as though there's a pandemic.
Who sets up what he calls a grand jury criminal investigation into global leaders' response to COVID.
This case, involving the most heinous crimes against humanity committed under the guise of a corona pandemic on a global scale.
You had a look at it. Does it have any legitimacy?
It has no legitimacy whatsoever. It's a sham.
It might look legit, though, and on the list of international lawyers assisting the process, Claire Deeks described as attorney at law.
That is one of the ways they're very dangerous. So their engagement with that kind of international space brings back into Aotearoa a sense of this isn't
New Zealand. We live in New Zealand, you silly bitch.
Talk. This is a real thing.
It's easy to make it seem a real thing when you have a captive audience, because by now, all our key influencers are continually pushing a theme.
Journalism is irredeemably corrupt, for various reasons, controlled by 5 multinational corporations that are...
I don't know about the 5 multinational corporations, but what this guy has said, the simple line was, journalism is irredeemably corrupt. And if you think about what I've been able to, I'm an old guy at home with no script, and if you think about what I've been able to do to eviscerate this, you've got to realise that journalism, and this is the top of New Zealand journalism, paid for by the Responsible Journalism Fund, which is instituted by Jacinda Ardern to make sure her story gets told and no one else's. And this is the pinnacle of New Zealand journalism right now. This has been released on Stuff and on Radio New Zealand's website and no doubt others over the last few days. And he's talking about the Pinnacle in New Zealand website, and then he's got to launch off into a bit of a conspiracy theory about that. But the fact is, that is this bloody program that we're watching here and pulling to bits, pinnacle of New Zealand journalism right now. Yep.
Close to the so-called deep state.
See,
it's a clever strategy. Don't trust the media, just trust us. And even when Facebook shuts down Voices for Freedom for misinformation, it's ready to go on new, benign-sounding platforms.
The days could be numbered.
As for shutting, everybody on Facebook knows that you've only got to say the wrong thing, the algorithms will trip you up, and they'll shut you down. So the idea that them being shut down for saying stuff, if they're politically oriented, I mean, every single bloody anything that's not left wing gets shut down regularly by Facebook. So it's no big deal, just no big deal.
If you can please sign up to Gab, it's really great over there. It is such a relief to be somewhere where when you're watching, you're not having to think, oh, what, are they going to sense to me here or there. So the Gab account and Telegram as well is more like a backup at the moment. The Telegram's a little bit like Messenger. It's quite easy once you get the hang of it.
These are proudly unregulated platforms. Gab is known as a haven of the far right. It was one of the favourite sites of the Christchurch mass shooter. The quote on...
So think about that for a minute. I'm not far right, but I'm on the right, I suppose. But I've never really taken any notice of Gab. I haven't been on it, didn't know all this. And so this was a favourite site of the guy from the mass shooter in Christchurch. What the hell's that got to do with anything? He's just one person. He is just one person. He's a fucking lunatic and a killer and a nasty bastard who probably should have been bloody popped off. But, the reality is he's just one person. And the fact that, if he was on Facebook, they're going to ban Facebook because he was on it. Don't be silly. I mean, geez, people, don't be silly.
For Freedom's Gab page is a verbatim QAnon line, and Telegram is where posts like this and these on the Counterspin Media page are run-of-the-mill.
Telegram simply does not care. I mean, Telegram is a place where you can see stuff that is classified in New Zealand most days because it is...
What, you're going to ask what she means by classified?
So violent.
They don't care.
They don't care.
Apparently not. We ask Telegram about its role in the spread of content like this. We get no response.
New Zealand will move to alert level 4 from 11:59 p.m. tonight.
In these flourishing chat rooms, August 17, 2021 marks a turning point. Researchers notice the big posters and their audiences becoming much more active.
They've put all these pictures together. This editing that's been done by them.
And for longer.
And we were seeing spikes early in the morning, in the middle of the day, and then late into the night.
So a lot of these people would be sort of, would be lonely people without very much, following at all. I hadn't come across them before.
So people were clearly spending too much time on the internet.
I'm not going to be...
Clearly. Once again, we've got the whole bloody population locked up and locked in, and clearly they're spending too much time on the internet. Of course they were spending too much time on the bloody internet. They couldn't go to the movies. They couldn't leave the house. This woman is an idiot. Talk about not taking into account the realities of the situation we've been in, and they call themselves responsible journalists. Give me a break. And here's this friggin' idiot again. They keep on falling back to these clowns.
Do by some legal fiction government who's making out that there's some sort of health crisis going on right now, and I literally see no one dying. Okay? This is all bullshit.
A lot of people do ask about the Nuremberg Code. What is your take on the Nuremberg Code?
The plan for Nuremberg 2.0 takes off, where politicians, public servants, academics, journalists, anyone judged to have committed a crime against humanity would be tried and could be hung. People can up or down vote who most deserves to be punished. And it's brandished as if it does have authority.
That was just some idiot who knew how to do that, and he's put up a popularity contest and given it a silly name.
Does it?
Or an unpopularity contest.
Absolutely not. Patently ridiculous. So the Nuremberg Code is the code of basically professional medical ethics that grew out of the Nuremberg trials in the post-World War II era, where Nazis, medical practitioners and other scientists were tried for crimes against humanity. And those were some of the worst known crimes against human beings in living history. It's
the reality of Nuremberg, the Nuremberg trials, is that they got a very, very small amount of the very nasty people after the World War II who had done disgusting things in those camps. And so it was a big show trial. But, they got some of the big names, but, I remember when, what was that guy's name? Eichmann Eichmann they found him after many, many years, and they had a big trial for him. He had been they've been looking for him for years. But there's a whole lot of them they never found.
Incredibly, not only inappropriate in terms of it being incorrect, but it's incredibly offensive.
And researchers start to see the violent misogyny and conspiracies transferring from the chat rooms to the mainstream.
That repeatedly talk about physical harm, rape, execution, death to myself, my colleagues, and to women journalists and women members of parliament, including the Prime Minister.
I got to say, I just think that basic statement that they're all being threatened with death is frigging nonsense. There's. I would say also that that journalists quite often get threats made against them. For nothing to do with politics, just because of the game they're in. But the idea that my threat to myself, she says, I got no idea who she is. I've never seen her before. But I do think this is just a little bit scripted. You need to say something like this. I think this is a very disingenuous and very dishonest program, I've got to say. But I mean, that's obvious by what we've seen so far. And look at this. I'm only bloody halfway through it. So sorry, but I'm going to keep going to the end.
Did you see the one Jabcinda 2?
Yes.
She's coming back for your children. Did you see the picture? And they've done her as a witch.
Well, that's just some idiot having a bit of fun with Photoshop, for God's sake.
The sovereign citizens' common law movement, those like Carleen Heriora, who believe the government is a corporation and its laws are illegitimate, gains traction too.
Welcome to the family, Louise.
With branches popping up all over the country, complete with induction ceremonies for the new self-styled sheriffs.
This is the day we've declared our country back.
Now that we have the regular use of completely violative
I wonder what she means by self-styled sheriffs. That's odd.
Language around execution, Nuremberg 2.0, so a whole bunch of ideas which inside those words.
Oh, this business about executions, good God. I mean, most people don't, a vast majority of people in New Zealand don't take that nonsense seriously. I mean, why would they? Good God. But, when you think about it, these idiots here are taking that kind of nonsense seriously, and they're supported by the bloody Responsible Journalism Fund. See if you can find somebody that's going to talk in a valid way about executing people. Get a bloody grip.
Is the idea of death, of execution, alongside the sovereign citizen sheriffs who are going to somehow do this.
Once again, so she's talking about some organisation that's going to have sheriffs that are going to kill people. I think people like they were talking like that are probably dangerous and stupid. But I mean, how many people are going to support that sort of nonsense? And as I say, as an activist, I've never heard of some of this shit. It's almost as though some of it's being bloody made up. But they just have a clip of a few idiots whose faces you can't see, walking up to a place and sort of doing a fingerprint. I mean, I should go back and have a look at that, and because where is it? How do you do this?
Both the threat
and its laws are illegitimate gains traction too.
Have a look at this.
Welcome to the family,
don't see these
with branches popping up all over the country, complete with
yeah.
induction ceremonies for the new self-styled sheriffs.
This is the day we've declared our...
If in the business of conspiracy theories, these idiots that have made this program, because they made this up, this could be a bunch of actors. It's just a piece of paper with some... Do you know what I mean? Where's the legitimacy in that? I mean, when they're making a case against people, they've got to bloody prove it. And so where do they get this video from? I mean, everybody in the world can make videos, including the people making this program. Because, alongside me, I could be making a video of me just filming this with my phone, but I'm not. It's somewhere here. But what I'm trying to say is that do we take this seriously or what?
back.
Now that we have the regular use of completely violative language around execution, Nuremberg 2.0, so a whole bunch of ideas which inside those words is the idea of death, of execution, alongside the sovereign citizen sheriffs who are going to somehow do this. You have kind of both the threat and the way in which it will be enacted.
A shift in the threat is being noticed by the government group assessing risk to national security. Now there is a distinct element that is politically motivated violent extremism that might loosely be described as anti-authority. The Combined Threat Assessment Group is monitoring extremist violence in opposition to COVID measures internationally and predicts it's highly likely to influence our domestic terrorism threat. What we are looking for are people who have got actual intent and capability to be conducting an attack. How many would fit into that group? How many people have the intent? We are investigating approximately 40 to 50 individuals at any one time that we would describe as having a violent extremist ideology.
Right. We are investigating 40 or 50 people who might have a violent ideology. I don't know how many people are in Palermo, but I'll tell you what, if they can't find 40 or 50 people in Courtenay Place on any bloody Friday or Saturday night who have a potential for violence, they're nuts. 40 or 50 people is nothing. And so out in the world, do I think that I could find 40 or 50 people in amongst the people that I have some communication with who are not potential, who wouldn't sort of express violent ideas? I think I probably could. They generally speaking don't, not that I've seen, but do I suspect that some people feel that they might like to do violence to the state? There would be a few, but the vast majority of them would never go past an idea, and certainly not an idea that's ever been expressed to me. But as go back to my days as a taxi driver, which was a long time ago. I mean, we're talking 60s, we're talking 1964 to 1977, and so a long time ago. But back then, I tell you what, I would have known 50 or 60 people in Wellington who were absolutely capable of violence. And the reason I knew them is because of a couple of people I went to school with who were thugs. And, I avoided them like the plague, but I knew who they were because I'd be an idiot not to. I mean, I'd just be an idiot not to. So would there be 40 or 50 or 60 people in Wellington back in 1970 who were capable of doing violence in an organised way? Absolutely. And so then if you go and look at, I don't know, look, there's a whole bunch of guys come riding down the road on bloody Harley Davidsons, right? Most of them are going to be completely peaceful, but in amongst them there will be a slightly more preponderant number of people who are capable of violence, but they wouldn't do that, and they might swagger around and talk about it, but people don't carry out that sort of stuff. And so for this woman who's the head of the New Zealand Intelligence Service, and she's telling us, let's go back and look again at exactly what she said. Think about precisely what she said. I can only make that go back if I've got this.
I mean that all of those people are planning to conduct an attack imminently, have got actual intent and capability. Assessing risk to national security.
Right. She wants to know people who represent a risk to national security. Listen.
Now there is a distinct element that is politically motivated violent extremism that might loosely be described as anti-authority.
Okay. Now there's a distinct element, right? She's not talking about people that they're going to go out and arrest. It's just a distinct element. I would have thought seriously, that would always be the case, that there would be idiots around the place who would have violent ideas towards the government, which would never manifest themselves in any sort of reality.
The Combined Threat Assessment Group is monitoring extremist violence in opposition to...
So the Combined Threat Assessment Group are monitoring these people, right? Interesting. And but there's only 40 or 50 of them. And
measures
once
internationally.
again, interesting that it's 40 or 50 rather than,
And predicts it's highly likely to influence our domestic terrorism threat. What we are.
Well, I would have thought that after having everybody locked up for so long and the whole vaccine thing, that in fact, 40 or 50 I would have thought was low.
Looking for are people who have got actual intent and capability to be conducting an attack.
So she's talking about people who've got actual intent and capability of conducting an attack, but there hasn't been one. Well, if they're letting people like that keep walking around, what's the deal? What's going on there? Is that because they can't prove it? I mean, what is capability? Is that going to be somebody with a gun or a can of petrol? Yeah.
Would fit into that group. How many people have the intent? We are investigating approximately 40 to 50 individuals at any one time that we would describe as having a violent extremist ideology.
So what she's actually just said is they have a violent extremist ideology. There's a big step from that to perpetrating violence. I mean, if you think about it, even Hitler, with his very violent bloody ideology, didn't actually attack anybody until 1939.
Doesn't mean that all of...
Mind you, they killed a whole lot of people in Germany prior to that. And, the rest of the world knew they were doing it and didn't do it. And the rest of the world did nothing about it. They let him build up his arms and all the rest of it. Everybody could see what was going on, and they did nothing about it.
People are planning to conduct an attack imminently, so I do want to provide some reassurance about that.
Wait a minute, what'd she say then?
Investigate approximately 40 to 50 individuals at any one time that we would describe as having a violent extremist ideology. That doesn't mean that all of those people are planning to conduct an attack imminently, so I do want to provide some reassurance about that.
So there's the key. That doesn't mean that they're all planning to conduct violence. She's slightly honest, but basically she said, we know there's a lot of people who quite like to do that, but no, we don't think any of them are going to do it anytime soon. That's what she just said. That's the truth of this, but these people, because that lady's the head of the New Zealand Intelligence Service. And just exactly how open is she actually going to be? I don't know. I'm not sure that she'd have too much to say. And I'm up to 22 minutes again. And I'm going to start again. There'll be another one.